Ah boy, well, this is totally gonna go over well, isn't it? It's actually from a source that we have talked about before, but today we are heading over to a comment made recently by Mathias Brunet on an episode of the... okay, bear with me here. Processus podcast. I'm going to leave a link in the description to two things. Firstly, it's this 16th episode of the Processus show, Le CH Repechera au 5th overall something. Yeah, my French kind of stinks. Sorry, it's been like 6 years. And I'll also leave a link in the description to this article on HabsFanatics.com, because what Elias Edmondson did was he transcribed the comments made by Mathias Brunet, and it's easier for us to screenshot it, put it on the screen, etc. So, let's talk today about the idea brought up during the episode of Processus, where Mathias Brunet mentioned that for Kent Hughes to consider parting with his 5th overall pick, he would need to secure an established player, possibly even a star player. This is when Brunet proposed the idea that the Montreal Canadiens could trade away their 5th overall pick to Toronto for Mitch Marner. Okay, pause. Let's talk about this in our own words before we go out there and read Brunet's take. Mitch Marner is kind of a legend in Montreal Canadiens lore, especially over the past few years, because you can say that Marner had a pretty big part in the Montreal Canadiens making the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because we recognize that part of the reason the Canadiens were able to beat Toronto in the first round was because of the fumbles that Marner ended up making, the big one, of course, being the puck over the glass penalty that he had taken in a very crucial moment in one of the later games. But Mitch Marner, of course, we recognize he's a very good, talented player. We know he is capable of producing 80, 90, 100 points in a season. It's just his playoff production has left a lot to be desired, and you can say that he had a really good playoff stint last year where he was around a point per game, but the majority of that production came in the first round against Tampa. He disappeared in the second round against Florida, and the Leafs ended up losing. This previous playoff season as well, nothing's changed. He's been not great, a lot of scrutiny on Marner, and I think when it comes to the trade ideas, everybody is talking about all these different names, these different teams, these different trade packages, etc., etc. What could the Maple Leafs use that would help them right now, what they could use to help them in the future, etc., etc. We even talked about this yesterday. We made a video talking about Marner going over to Vegas for a package including William Carlsson and Shea Theodore. But if you wanted to talk about this trade idea, Montreal getting their hands on Mitch Marner for the 5th overall pick, yeah, it's easy to say that Toronto wouldn't really be getting much out of it because, look, William Carlsson and Shea Theodore, that's a lot of value you're adding to the team today. 5th overall, whether you take a Caden Lindstrom or a Demidov if he's available, or a Berkeley Catton or whomever else, that guy is probably not going to be an impactful number 1 asset on the Maple Leafs until 2026 maybe. He'll be okay earlier on, he might even be good, but he's not going to be in his prime for a few years. And if the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to try to keep that window open for now, then you could understand why the trade offer of a William Carlsson and a Shea Theodore could be a lot more enticing. However, this is the big change in direction that you can go down. Because if the Maple Leafs are going to commit to this retool, rebuild on the fly kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, we had our window, it's open, but now with Mitch Marner potentially on the way out, this window is going to close a little bit. We can't commit fully into it like we have been trying to the past few years. We just need to take a few years to set back, regroup. Nylander and Matthews are on their new deals. Tavares is going to expire soon too, so we'll have some extra money to reset and refuel. If you have the time to wait, then okay, I can understand the philosophy in going full future in a sort of Mitch Marner trade, going with a bunch of assets that will help you out a few years from now. Now, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, in my opinion, of course, if you wanted to go out there and say that the same argument applies, hey, a Caden Lindstrom might not be a number 1 player in the NHL until 2026 or 2027. Same thing could be said about a Berkeley Catton or anybody else that the Canadiens could draft at 5th overall. If you wanted to say their window of opportunity is right now, you have this window, it's slowly opening up. You've got Suzuki, Caulfield, Doc, Newhook, Slafkovsky, these guys in that age range. Mitch Marner is just a tad older than all of those guys, and he is still a very capable hockey player. Plus, if your intention is to put together a team that is able to get over the hump and make the playoffs in this upcoming year, it kind of doesn't matter if Mitch Marner's contract is going to expire at the end of the year anyway, right? I mean, of course, ideally you would like to keep him, especially if you're trading away a 5th overall pick for him, but I'd say that the desire for a Toronto Maple Leafs team to keep Marner and not lose out on any assets by trading him away, I feel like that desire would be stronger with the Maple Leafs versus a Montreal Canadiens team where it's like, hey, if they're able to make the playoffs, that already is a win. Because unfortunately, a Berkeley Catton wouldn't be helping the Canadiens make the playoffs in 2024-2025. You'd have to wait a few years. But of course, that's just my opinion about this entire thing. Let's go over to the article and read what it says about Mathias Brunet and his overall comments. Mitch Marner to Montreal. Really? Even though it is just a suggestion and not a solid rumor, it is still worth examining this possibility a bit more closely. As we know, the Leafs' number 16 did not have an extraordinary playoff performance, and several journalists covering the Maple Leafs are wondering if Marner should be sacrificed by management to seek reinforcements in other positions, particularly defense. However, when we closely examine Mitch Marner's contractual situation, he only has 1 year left on his deal at nearly $11 million. Let's say it would be difficult for the Maple Leafs to trade him, especially since the organization has not yet asked the star forward to waive his no-trade clause. Additionally, if Kent Hughes truly intends to acquire him, he would need to ensure that Marner wants to sign a long-term contract with the Canadiens. Admittedly, this scenario is unlikely, but with Kent Hughes, one is never safe from a surprising move at the draft, as he's proven in the past 2 years. And then linked is the Processus episode where Mathias Brunet brings this idea up. If you wanted to talk about Mitch Marner and the potential of him staying in Montreal, signing a long-term deal, this doesn't really seem like something that would be ideal. Just from my perspective here, seeing what Toronto was like for Marner and how the guy had to deal with the harsh media, and he really was not good at navigating that at all. He really did not know how to properly answer questions and give the best vanilla cookie-cutter responses. He would always say something that would get everybody upset at him. If you go over to Montreal from Toronto, I feel like you're not really changing much. You're getting a lot of the same stuff, just with a different expectation for your team, and everybody speaks French as well. So it is a little different, but kind of the same. I would understand the idea if you bring up that, hey, the expectations in Montreal are a lot lesser than Toronto, so there wouldn't necessarily be too much of a demanding load on Marner in the media. He wouldn't have to be one of the top guys to respond and have these comments, because you've got all the young guys that a lot of Canadiens fans care about too, that are also becoming leaders and forcing themselves into the spotlight in a big way. Not to say that Marner won't have the spotlight, it's just, with Montreal not expecting to being a playoff team, and with this era of Nick Suzuki pretty much just starting, a guy like Mitch Marner doesn't have all that expectation on him to be the best point producer on the team right away. If he has a sluggish year, then okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. Sure, he's making $11 million, but they're not going to be as hard as him in Montreal than if he was still in Toronto. Right? Right? Am I crazy about that? I get it, you could say that Marner heading over to Montreal, he should automatically be the top point producer, but the Canadiens are growing in such a way where if Nick Suzuki, Marner, and Slafkovsky are all playing on the same team and they're all sharing the same power play minutes, you kind of have to wonder where the production is going to go. Marner got a lot of assists because he was playing with Austin Matthews, you have to remember that. And the Canadiens, unfortunately, do not have anybody of that same caliber on their team goal-scoring wise. So Marner's production would probably dip a bit if he was in Montreal. And if you wanted to talk about the rise of some of the other guys like Nick Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky, if they get improvements in their point production, then it kind of balances itself out, right? It's not like Marner would expect to be the 100-point caliber guy in Montreal right away just because he got acquired. Like, it's not direct, one-to-one. So I do think there would be some sort of a leash given to Marner, a little bit longer than what he had in Toronto, but at the same time, Canadian media is Canadian media, so you can let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about this entire Mitch Marner for 5th overall conversation. What are your opinions on this trade idea? Do you think Mathias Brunet is crazy for going out there and bringing this up? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.